Hey everybody, this is Shawn, your local dietitian out of Atlanta, Georgia. Our episode today, we're going to talk about how to prepare raw chicken, right? A lot of times when we're putting together a recipe or putting together something for a meal, we see all the different steps that go into it, but we don't see the preparation that comes beforehand to get from point A to point B. So one of the things I'm going to show you how to do is one, simply how to cut chicken, and a couple different tips on how you can marinate it and then also cook it, especially if you have a really busy schedule. So first thing I'm going to start off with is, you can see I've already kind of gone halfway there. I got one of those really large family value packs of chicken. I just cut the chicken in half. The reason why I did that is half of the chicken is going to go into 1 gallon bag and the other one's going to go into the other gallon bag. This is something I do with a lot of my meats. Is I'll typically, once I grab them from the store, I'll prepare them. Either I'll have them in, chicken breasts like this. These are going to cut up into cubes. You can cut them up long ways. Again, whatever kind of shape you want to cut them into is really up to you. Sometimes it's the texture people like better. Sometimes it's the visual representation, how they like it to look. Again, there's lots of different ways you can do it. So what I typically do is, either one, you can buy your own marinade. So you can see here I have a teriyaki chicken marinade. I'm gonna make some stir-fry vegetables sometime this weekend, and I'm gonna match with that for my meal prep for the week. You could also match things like a white rice, a quinoa, a mashed potato. Again, what I try to do with these is almost have a theme. It could be Italian, it could be Asian, it could be Latin or Mexican. And then that, once you have the meat situated and figured out, that's where you're gonna match your carbohydrate and typically your vegetable along with it, that are gonna best match along with the theme of that specific meal. So I have my chicken breasts here on the board. All I'm simply going to do with these chicken breasts is really easy. All right, I'm just gonna lay it out flat, and I'm just gonna cut down straight into strips. Now, one of the most important things that you want to have is a sharp knife. Okay, you don't want to get something at the dollar store that's like $5. If you're going to be cooking in the kitchen, you want to make sure you invest in the things that you have in the kitchen. Good pots, good pans, good knives, right? Because if this isn't sharp and I'm trying to cut through something that's going to be a little challenging and it slips, boom, I'm cutting myself, all right? Which we don't want that to happen. Now, the other thing, when I'm cutting something, right, you can see my fingers are kind of crinkled here. So when I'm cutting down and away, my fingers are out, so I'm cutting my fingers. So when I'm cutting down and away, down and away, down and away. And I'm just basically making cubes with my chicken that I'm going to be sticking into that bag. Now again, chicken is a protein source. You can see I have a chicken breast here. Chicken breast is typically gonna be a leaner cut of chicken in comparison to if your chicken had skin on it. So obviously as an athlete, you want to try to strive for leaner cuts of protein as much as possible, all right? Whereas if I had something like a fried chicken, a coated chicken, a cheesy chicken, again, that's not me saying you can't have that or don't have that, but, right, a majority of the time when we're having our protein sources, and then let's say specifically if it is chicken, you want to try to go with the leaner cuts, whether it's buying it, cooking it, making it, getting it from a fast food restaurant, whatever it is, you want to try to get those better options, because those are things we want to keep account of, because that's what's going to be really important for our body to be fueled and efficient as much as possible. And just think as well, right, if we're eating fried foods all the time, things that are just loaded with cheese, coated up, right, that can make us feel slow, sluggish, heavy, things that may physically make us not feel very well, but then also mentally we may not feel very well because we're thinking about how our body feels, right? If I'm going on the court or if I'm going on the field and I feel slow and sluggish and heavy, right, I may physically be fine, but mentally I'm thinking about how my body feels, and if it doesn't feel great, that can directly reflect over to how you're gonna perform that day, whether it's practice, your lift, or your game that day. So you can see I cut up all the chicken breasts into some cubes. All I'm gonna do is throw those into the bag. Now, the reason why I'll get 3, 4 different types of meat. One, it gives you variety. Two, I have different marinades and different flavors. So that way, when you're cooking throughout the week, you're not eating the same thing Monday through Friday, right? This, for me and my fiance, will probably last maybe 2 days, 3 days tops. And then I'll have another option I can go to. A whole different theme, a whole different flavor, spices, herbs, whatever it may specifically be. So I got my gallon bag, my chicken's inside. All right, if you want it super simple and easy, you can just use the bottle marinade you get in the store. If you want to be creative, there's tons of different marinade options. You can go on Google, look them up, whatever you want. It could be, I want a Latin chicken recipe, and it'll pop up, who knows, thousands and thousands of different recipes you can do, and you can make your own homemade recipes, which that's also something I do too. So, boom, all I'm gonna do is stick the teriyaki sauce in there. Right, you always got a little bit of extra in the bottle, so you want to put a little bit of water in there just so you get all that good extras out. Give it a little shake. I'm gonna get the rest of that sauce in there. Now, marinating process, it can be, depending on when you want to cook it, you could leave it in the fridge, marinate it for 5-6 hours, cook it later that night, you're good to go. You could have it for 24 hours. Again, the longer that you marinate, the longer and deeper that flavor is going to infuse into the specific meat that you're trying to marinate for whatever purpose you have. Now, the reason why I do so many bags too is because, let's say, boom, I'm going to stick this in the refrigerator. That's going to marinate for an entire day. But if I'm doing multiple meats, and let's say I do 3 or 4 gallon bags worth of meat, I'm going to freeze these. So now, right, if this is starting to get low in the refrigerator and I need more meat or more protein for the next day, one, I got to think of, okay, well, that has to defrost. So when I take it out, I got to make sure I know, especially for chicken, you need to give it at least a good 1 to 2 days to completely defrost. If you don't completely defrost the chicken, then it's going to have that rubbery taste to it, and you really want to avoid that. So if you're freezing and defrosting, make sure you give it a proper amount of time so that it has the time to defrost. But this one I'm going to marinate for a day. I'll stick in there because the theme I'm going to do is obviously an Asian theme for my meal coming up. The other ones are going to stick into the freezer so that way they can freeze. And then when I know this is starting to run low, or I only have like a day's worth of meals left, that's when you take those extra ones that you made out of the freezer and then put it in the fridge, let it defrost, and then by the time you need to go cook the meat, it's going to be ready to cook. Another couple tips as well is, let me grab these right here. When you're taking your chicken out of the bag, what you can do is before you cook it is put it on some paper towels, and that can help pull some of that excess moisture that might be sitting on the meat or the chicken. So that way when you go cook it in the pan, it doesn't start to steam the meat, and we get those nice brown crispy pieces on the edge of the meat, but also cooking the meat on the inside too. Now, like I said earlier, if you're someone who's super busy, one of your best friends can be a crock pot. All right, you can get these for about 40 to 50 bucks on Amazon or Walmart. There's a lot of times where, again, in the athletics world, and all you guys can attend to this if you work in athletics, where you may have 10 to 16 hour days. You're like, oh my God, like I don't want to go home and cook when I get home because it's 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night or later. Crock pot's your best friend, right? You get up in the morning, in your routine, you get the crock pot the night before, you got your meat already sitting in the refrigerator, or you can stick the meat that's frozen into this as well. So you can kind of do either or. Throw it in the crock pot, stick it on low, it's gonna cook the entire day. So then when you come home, you don't have to worry about, oh, I gotta cook meat right now. Boom, you put it in the crock pot this morning, the meat's already done. Or what I've had people do too is, besides just the meat, if you want to stick all sorts of different vegetables, there's opportunities where you could stick also different carbohydrates in with kind of these one-stop shop kind of gallon bags. That's something too where you stick all the ingredients in, throw it in the crock pot, again, come home, and then you have everything you would need to have essentially that overall complete plate with the vegetable, the carb, and the protein as well. So I hope that helped. This is just some tips and things that I do on a regular basis. Again, we're busy. We're trying to be eating high quality foods. We're trying to be efficient with the time that we do have to ourselves that's not spent with the athletes or the staff or the individuals that we're working with. And I know it's super challenging with our schedules. So hopefully this is something that can help you be able to continue to do what you need to do and still eat just as well as your athletes do, because that's one of the most important things, right? We can preach strength training, sports psychology, eating really well, having good habits, schedule, routine, all those different things. But as us as practitioners, if we're not practicing that stuff as well, right? I don't want someone telling me that to do something, but they're not at least to a certain extent doing it themselves, right? Because most athletes are gonna pick up pretty quickly if you're saying like, oh yeah, go make sure you get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and then you're a coach coming in the morning like, oh, I'm exhausted, or your body language shows, oh, I'm exhausted, and you're like, oh, I got 6 hours of sleep, but you just told the athlete the day before, hey, you need to go bed earlier, hey, you need to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, but then you're not practicing what you preach. So always practice what you preach and hold yourself to a high standard if you're going to hold others to a high standard. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if you want to look at or listen to my podcast, my YouTube channel, my Instagram, or my website, all that's going to be on my Linktree link in the bio or the show notes that you can click on. Any questions, comments, don't be afraid to hit me up.